what I wanted to maybe start off with is, because we have some folks here who don't know anything about MESA, or very little about MESA, I'll just kind of take a couple of minutes to describe who we are and what we do. And that's a good lead into then what we're gonna cover. So MESA, Minnesota Emerging Software Advisors, we are now in our 16th year. We mentor pro bono startup software and software-enabled companies. We have a mission to grow the size and vitality of the software industry in Minnesota. We've, in the course of our history, we have mentored 102 companies. Maybe we're up a couple more, but 102. Cumulatively, they've raised over $1.2 billion in equity. We have 58 mentors, all of whom have been C-level, VP-level executives in the software industry and had software startup experience. It's a pretty key thing in terms of our mentors' backgrounds. And we currently have 32 mentee companies. That might have also, we're in the midst of another cohort of joining. And we meet typically on a monthly basis with the founders. We position ourselves and like to think of ourselves as a trusted advisor to the founders of companies. We do not invest in the mentee companies. Our mentors are discouraged strongly not to invest into the companies that they mentor because we really want to be this safe place where the mentor, the founder, can have a close relationship based on trust, because frequently our founders are dealing with things they've never dealt with before, and they may be reluctant or unable to actually share that with some of their partners, some of their investors. So we like to think we provide a safe space with quite a bit of experience on helping out our founders. So we have a number of partners that help us by funding us, because all of our people are volunteers. Nobody's being paid to do this. But we do have costs to put on events and market and et cetera. So I know Frederickson and Byron, we have a couple of folks here. There's partners for us. RSM is a partner for us. Who else is here? I know Pete Stevie was here. I don't know if he's still here. He's a partner, and if I missed anybody, I apologize. But we really can't do what we want to do without their help. So, any questions? So we'll get underway. I've got 3 outstanding mentors here this evening to talk about their mentor experience. Chris Heim, Tom Venable, and Jim Moar. And Jim has been president of MESA for almost all the time that it's existed.
He must look like the founder.
He was one of the founders of MESA.
Godfather.
Yeah. So I won't use the mics, but you guys can share those.
I don't think we need that.
Well, we're loud enough. But I do have some questions, and we might get through all of them, but it all depends on how wordy and how interactive the group is. But here's a group of individuals that have been mentoring startup companies, not just within MESA, because I know some of you have done mentoring of other organizations for other businesses, and in some cases actually still work as a leader of a company, so you're mentoring probably some of your employees. So let me start off with a question. How do you handle the tension between giving direct advice versus letting mentees struggle and learn on their own?
Calling one. You better call on somebody, John.
I'll start with you, Chris. You can kind of work your way down.
Okay. Well, I have taken on the approach of trying to serve like a board member, because I am actively working and running a company, and I found my first year or so, in fact, Jim and I talked about this after I had about a year of experience, that I was finding myself wanting to jump in too much and to provide too much guidance, but I'm not going to be there tomorrow, the day that they have to go implement it. And so I serve on a couple boards, and I've learned a lot about nose in, hands out, kind of just ask really good questions. And so I think that's the approach that I'm taking, to not get too deep into the how, and just really help the mentee just do a little bit more critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. Tom, you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, I would just add, I agree with everything Chris said. I would add that, brutal honesty is really important. Sometimes we like to kind of sugarcoat things to people because we want to be liked and not stir the pot and not cause conflict. It's called the Minnesota nice culture, right? But in my experience, in addition to not getting too involved, which is really hard for type A personalities like you and I, Chris, probably, right? Is just to be, again, ask good questions, but be brutally truthful and honest, and ask those questions that might make people uncomfortable. Because that's how entrepreneurs, especially young people, learn and grow.
I think key to how MESA constructed itself was having a situation where you create a lot of trust between mentee and mentors. And to Tom's point, when you have that trust, you can be brutally honest because the mentee knows you're only there for their success. You're not there to make money for yourself because we're not doing that. In the best of all worlds, we never direct. In the best of all worlds, we teach. And when I sense that there's a mentee that maybe is going over here, which we all do, is I think the best thing to do is, in part, be honest about it, but then also do some teaching. And recognize at the end of the day, it is the mentee's company. So they're gonna have to make a final decision. We can teach, we can encourage, and then they have to decide what's best for them.
Great. Jim, I'll start with you on this question. What are the signs that tell you a mentoring relationship isn't working, and how do you navigate that conversation? I know you've had to do this many times in the course of MESA's history.
Yeah. Because one of the reasons why we meet monthly is because there's so much going on in a startup that you just need to stay in touch. And I won't go into the WIG process, but we have certain things that we do where there really should be action by the person we're mentoring, the mentee, from monthly meeting to monthly meeting. And so my best metric is not only are they're not doing what we tell them to do. That is a mistake. That what we've talked about in the last meeting, that at the next meeting, you can see how they've internalized it and made it their own. Because that's what's in fact then gonna matter. However, there are times you get to the next meeting and nothing has been done. And when that happens with some frequency, not just a couple months, time out. And you just and then back to being brutally honest. You have to say, what's going on here? Because there's no action from what we talked about last time. And then that takes you into the conversation about what's going on. I had one mentee that had a co-founder that decided that he wanted to be co-president. And so any kind of advice that the real president got from us, he would try to countermand. And it was only by saying, time out, what's going on here?
Right. That
the gentleman that we were mentoring said, well, here's what's going on with my co-founder. And it ended up with the co-founder being fired.
Tom or Chris, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, yeah, as you know, John, I kind of a real life experience here. So I just joined MESA 9 months ago as a mentor, and my first mentee assignment I started with in September, and the end of the story is we basically fired them yesterday. Young company, young CEO, right out of college. He was, I'm not gonna mention any names, but he was 22 years old, right at the University of Minnesota. Brilliant person. And his co-founder was an ex-Fortune 500 executive. I'll put it in there, probably 50-ish age range. And we had a face-to-face meeting to kind of kick off our relationship. And it was great. We spent 2 hours together, and we had all sorts of great conversations and ideas and action items and so forth. And then October got there and I never heard from them, and so I reached out to them and said, we'd like to schedule our next 101, and it was radio silence. And then November came, I said, we'd like to meet again. Oh yeah, we'll have a meeting in November, and it was like me pulling teeth to try to give them free advice, which was frustrating for me. Like, okay, well, I'm here as a volunteer. I'm trying to help you, give you an hour a month worth of time from a guy who's been doing this for 40 some odd years. And they didn't, it was like the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink routine, right? So, and so we basically this week told them we're done, right? Because, so well, can we meet once a quarter, which is not the process that Jim just talked about. And so we exited the relationship, wished them well. But it was to me very sad because they got a great business model. This young man is freaking genius, but he's 22 years old and he's got a lot to learn, and we could have been a lot of assets to him, and he just didn't, whatever reason, didn't want to engage. So that's my lesson on the downside of life, and maybe he'll come back when he matures a little bit and grows up and realizes that he's not the smartest person on the planet at age 22, and we were all 22 once, so we know that feeling, right? And so
I've forgotten.
Yeah, I think you bring up a key point, which is, that's unusual. I mean, and it's not a reflection of you, Tom. I mean, I think if you've been in mentoring for a while, you're going to have a situation like that. We have a lot of experience as mentors. Our time is valuable. We just don't put a price tag on that, put a dollar amount. And that's one of the things I think that has to be established early on in the relationship, is that we're doing this out of the goodness of our heart.
Right.
Well, we could be doing it for somebody else. Then if you don't want us to help you the way we've agreed, we're gonna do it. Because we have other companies that are interested in our help, so.
And think about the dynamic here, if I can just insert. We most often we have two mentors working with, sometimes it's one, sometimes two mentors working with the mentee. Oftentimes the two mentors have never worked together before, never met before. They certainly have not met the person they're gonna mentor. So here, now you have three individuals that are gonna start working together, meeting monthly, often for 2, 3, 4 years. And the percentage of the time that experience that Tom just had is far less than 10%. So you get these people that have not worked together before, and yet it works. I mean, that over the years, that's been the thing that's amazed me the most.
Hey, thoughts?
Just, yeah, real quick, my first client or company that I was helping, it wasn't going very well. It was just, he was struggling with the product that he was building, but he was so dedicated, and he just kind of had this, he needed to be right, and he had so much at stake, and he wasn't making any money, and he was just kind of in this desperate mode. So I took a different approach, and he was also doing a little bit of consulting. And I'm like, my opinion is you do not have a viable product, but it could be. And so he switched. I just encouraged him, start consulting and build your product on the side. So I think he did that, and I think over a couple of years he ended up, kind of like making a go of it, and I think he switched directions. But he was putting everything at risk, and I think he was so dedicated to it had to work. And Troy and I just redirected him and just said, you need a longer runway, and no investor is going to give you money right now. And so that was,
Yeah.
so it was. I really feel like it was a positive outcome in the end.
Chris, why don't I start here with you? Can you share a time when a mentee taught you something that fundamentally shifted your perspective on business or leadership?
Matt is who I'm mentoring right now, and he's got an AI company, and I think at first I was just highly skeptic if this was going to work. He's building basically a marketing research company that builds synthetic data, and we'll see if he actually makes a go of the business. But I think what I learned is that he was listening so intently to the customer, and so he was letting his business, and he still is, letting his business move around, and he's just responding to the clients that he's meeting. And I think I was feeling like he needed a lot more direction, and you know, Gene and I have done a nice job just being patient with him. But he's learning his way through what and having an AI company is, and the target market is completely different than the beginning. And I learned that from him, that he just let it evolve a little bit. Yeah.
Good. Tom or Jim, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think my experience over the years working with founders and CEOs that I've learned over and over again is that the founder mentality is they know the market inside and out. And I've learned that that's not always the case, right? Because if it's your idea, it's your baby. Hopefully a lot of you are parents in this room, and we've all had kids, and your baby's beautiful and perfect, right? And it's important as a mentor is to recognize that what you hear from the entrepreneur may not always be exactly what the market wants. And sometimes that gets to be a frictional conversation. I've got a client right now that I'm working with, not a mentor, he's a paid client of mine. I won't mention his name. And he's telling me one thing, and I'm talking to people in his market, and I'm hearing a very different perception on his product market fit. But his ego will not let him necessarily recognize that he's not 100% right. He's 80% right? He's a great guy, he's tons of energy, he's doing great, but he's only got it 80% figured out because he won't open his ears and his eyes to what his customers are saying. And that's not a reflection on anyone in particular, but I've probably worked with close to 70 founders in my life, between a consultant and an investor and a board member and an employee and a founder myself. It's the idea that it's my company and I know best. And the really good founders, the ones that recognize that the only voice that really matters is the customers. And I like to help people get past that and understand the voice of the customer is numero uno, even though it's your baby.
Probably one of the things that I learned, certainly reinforced, but probably learned, was hiring forward, which is very tough to do. One of our fastest growing mentees, the founder CEO, as he went from $1 million in revenue to $5 million to $10 million and upwards, was having to replace some of his direct reports, because let's pick any job you want, head of marketing. The individual had done very well at $1 million, but they'd never taken the company to $5 million or $10 million. And so he was very good, and it's very difficult to do, to say, when I'm about to make the next step, I need to hire forward to somebody who's been there, done that, in terms of achieving where I'm going next. Now you can imagine all the problems that causes, and it causes a lot of problems. But that caused me, as I mentored then future companies that also were on a fast growth rate, to kind of bring that thought to them. And again, not that they need to do it, but they need to think about that in their current situation. And that was not my original idea. That was something I learned from a mentee.
That's great. Jim, maybe you can take the next one, start the next one off. When mentoring someone in an industry or situation outside your direct experience, how do you stay valuable?
Shut up. No, seriously, I mean, there are times, and you know, it's easier obviously on a two-person team, that there are times that you can be involved, should be involved in the discussion, and there are times when it gets to be very domain knowledge specific, and the best thing to do is to shut up. Let my colleague take the stage.
Either of you guys have anything else around that?
Sure, I have some relative examples, experience to share. I kind of have the opposite experience that Jim just espoused, excuse me. And that is that sometimes a voice from outside the box, so to speak, can be very, very valuable, right? I got brought into a medical device company 4 years ago. Never seen a medical device manufacturing company in my life, right? But as the guy said, you know, sales is sales, marketing is marketing. And I didn't want to do it at first, but then a fresh voice with new perspectives and, more importantly, new questions, open-ended questions to why do you do it this way? Well, we've always done it that way because this is our industry. Well, it's 2024 and AI and the internet and blah, 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 it's changed. Let's kind of think about things differently. So I try to be more the voice of challenging the status quo than just sitting back and saying it's not my domain. So just a different perspective than what Jim had.
Chris,
But I'm a nonconformist, break the rule kind of guy. That's how I was raised by my mom. So
Yeah, I think one of the things we're doing for Matt is he has board meetings I think every quarter, maybe it's 3 times a year. And I understand parts of his business, but I've never done marketing research. So we've just taken on, like, part of my job is to help him get ready for his board meeting. And so when we're at times when he's just really trying to solve some technical things that are kind of beyond me, we also just carve out some time to just pitch me on your board meeting. I'll help you make the board deck better for your meeting. And I think that's really helped him a lot because, you know, I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes you cram for a test, you cram for a board meeting, and if it's the first time you're talking about your thing in front of your board, that's never a good idea. And so we've gotten into good cadence that we are the dry run, and it doesn't matter how much knowledge I have of his business, I can still give him good feedback on how prepared he is, you know, so that's worked out well.
One of the things that I would share is, and I know this is true of my fellow mentors, is that we have domain expertise and competence in an area typically, and our mentee may need help that we don't have. And fortunately, we may not be the most efficient at being able to make the connections, but we're working hard to make it easier for our mentors to find fellow mentors who have that domain expertise so that they can be invited in to perhaps challenge or provide a fresh voice or be a critical thinker in terms of the challenge that they're having to face. Doesn't mean that they become yet another mentor necessarily, they just become someone who's an expert available within the MESA community.
And we've done that, I think, best in terms of raising capital.
Yes.
Where one or, especially when there's a single mentor, and that mentor may not have vast experience in raising capital, and they can call on several of our mentors who are outstanding in the area and get assistance.
This next question, we sort of touched on a little bit, so you can gloss over if you want, but what's the most common blind spot you see entrepreneurs or business leaders that they rarely recognize in themselves? Tom, I think you've kind of focused on that quite a bit. Jim or Chris, do you have any kind of thoughts on what you've seen?
Well, what came to mind is just, it's not just about the product, and if you're the entrepreneur, and especially if you're a technologist and you're developing it, the product is great, but there's so many other things. It's the ICP, you know, the target market, all these other things, and I just can't imagine if you're a team of 1 or a team of 3, how you can get lost for a few days just building out your software and not have time to poke your head up and think about all the other things. And that's I think one of the most beneficial parts of having a mentor that's not necessarily just able to speak at the same language, like if it's technology, you know, because like I come from a marketing background, and I bring that value to make sure that we're spending enough time on that, because it's not just about the product.
Jim? Similar? Yeah, I think, Tom,
I do have one quick thing to add. So the biggest thing I see entrepreneurs make, the big blind spot, is trying to do too many things at once. So I have remember the movie City Slickers? Where Jack Palance played a guy named Curly. He was the old horseback rider guide guy, and he was famous for saying one thing, right? So I actually have a slide. So all my entrepreneurs I talk to, it's him. And what I see with entrepreneurs is that they start on a path, and a customer or the market says, "Oh, can you build me this feature?" Right? They run up there, and they do this, and all of a sudden they're trying to do 17, 18 things at once, right? And so I try to get back, and especially as an entrepreneur with a small company, do one thing, kill it, figure it out, own it, dominate your market, and then look at option number 2, option number 3. But that's the biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs make, is they get too spread too thin given their resources and their time.
what boundaries do you set in a mentor relationship, and how do you maintain them while still being genuinely invested?
Boundaries?
Yeah.
You want to take that one, Jim?
I don't think I've really had an issue with that.
Okay,
I mean, I think most mentors say, you know, we meet monthly, but if something important comes up, you know, call me and let's talk. I had one mentoring session that the individual started by saying, "I need you to be a father today." Nothing to do with the business. And you just, and so in terms of a boundary, you know, at that point you don't say, "Well, no, I don't do that kind of thing." That's what the individual needed, and that's what we talked about.
My answer is going to be similar, that I don't know that I haven't encountered the need for a boundary, but sometimes it's not about the business either. It's a human-to-human connection. You build a strong trust, and life gets real in a lot of different ways. It's not just about the business sometimes.
is there a piece of conventional mentoring wisdom that you now completely disagree with?
And I thought about that question when I read it, and I was like, I couldn't think of
It's
something.
okay if you don't.
I couldn't, I struggle with that.
I have another
With
question.
that question. Well, good, because I don't have an answer for that one. Usually I'm not sure on answers, but that one stumped me.
Yeah, I did give these guys these questions, so it wasn't, it's not cold. Yeah. But that's okay if you don't really have a thought. Really, my final question here, and maybe we can take some questions from the group. What's one pivotal mistake you made early in your mentoring relationship that completely changed how you approach mentoring now? Do you have that experience that you can share?
I would say I was guilty of getting too involved, right? So not through MESA, but previous relationships I've had in my life where I was a mentor to young entrepreneurs, I'll say, entrepreneur singular. But I've made the mistake more than once, so I guess it is plural. Where I got too invested and too close to the outcome. I did invest. I wasn't financially involved, but I don't want to say I cared too much, but I got clouded. My judgment as a mentor got clouded because I wanted this to succeed so bad that it clouded my judgment.
Yeah, that's why I like to keep thinking about it as responsibility as teaching. Because if you stay in that frame of mind, you just recognize as much as you want to jump in,
Right.
that the best thing you can do is teach. And then again, it's their company. They've got to figure out of the 6 things I might say, what 2 or 3 or maybe none just resonate with them and they can internalize. And as I said earlier, the best metric is at the next meeting, can they come back and tell you what they've done with it? And the best metric is when they can describe what they've done with it as opposed to parroting back what one of the two
Sure.
mentors may have said.
I think the thing I'll add, preparation matters on both sides, and you know, I've shown up. I didn't like review the last month's notes, and I just was kind of winging it. But so has the mentee, and they didn't spend time. And so you can spend a lot of time just like getting your mentor educated on all the things you did over the last month, and that's not time well spent. So I'd say maybe the lesson learned. It's a slightly different way of answering your question, but it's not just about the meeting, which it doesn't take a lot, but maybe 15-20 minutes beforehand just to get prepared.
Yeah.
Because we try to keep our meetings to an hour, and boy, you can chew up 35-40 minutes quick of just updates, and that doesn't advance all that's doing is just reporting out.
Yeah,
So
good suggestion.
yeah.
Yeah. We have that challenge with the EC in our monthly meetings.
Oh, okay.
We're getting better, I think. Open up to the audience. Any questions that anybody has? Scott?
Any regrets working with mentees, either advice you gave them that in hindsight maybe wasn't good advice, or advice you wish you would have given a mentee?
Good question.
Really good question.
Laura's husband and I were mentors to a company, again, as Tom did. I'm not going to mention names, but he got very focused on enterprise market being his first market, with all the challenges that an enterprise makes for a startup. And I think both Tim and I, in retrospect, we advised him on the consequences of that and to look for alternatives. In hindsight, I wish we had been stronger on that point, because he didn't make it.
Scott, I wasn't involved with this, but I feel really bad for one of the mentees and how much equity he gave up to take that first tranche of money, and just the years that he was putting into it, and I think on like 25% of it or something. And I wasn't involved with that, but I think just making sure, you know, the money part of this matters as well, because you're maybe a little bit desperate for that money, but if you give up too much equity, then the business has to just be so phenomenally successful for it to matter. And I think somebody could have got him a little sooner to have helped him through that. That was before I got involved.
Yeah, I would echo that same thing. My biggest regret's a couple of situations where I advised people to take money before they should have taken it. Right? If they would have waited a year, they would have gotten a whole different deal done, and dilution and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a hard. It's
Really
it's
hard.
not
That's
not
not a
an
binary
easy.
answer.
Just no
Question.
real crystal ball.
This question parlays into that really nicely. I'm a mentee and a founder, and I'm to the point now where I'm trying to entertain this question of, do I want to bootstrap or raise money? And I'm just inundated with not necessarily advice, but everything you hear. The measure of success is how much money you raised, and so that's tugging with kind of my instincts and actually my forecast saying, you know, I think I want to bootstrap. And then so I just want to hear how you have those conversations with your mentees, and it has it sounds like you've regretted. Those some of the biggest regrets you've made is say, yeah, take money, take a bunch of it, take it now. And it's something I wake up one morning, I'm like, I'm gonna go raise $5 million, and one next day I'm like, why would I ever raise money? So, and I still haven't figured it out. So I'm curious how you guys think about it and how you talk to your mentees.
That's one of the best things to teach on. Teaching is part of teaching is giving alternatives. Yes, you can do X. Let's talk about the consequences of doing X, but you can also do Y. Let's talk about those consequences and have you think through what is best for you. I will say that over the years, I've become more biased to not raise early unless there is a compelling need to raise early.
I would echo Jim and say, if you don't have a well-defined recipe for how you're going to scale, and use that money. And if you don't need to raise the money to be able to keep expanding your product, validating your value proposition, and getting a proof of your let's call it your go-to-market formula, I think the longer you can hang on, the better off you are. Because then the money's gonna be, I'm gonna build a sales team, or I'm gonna build out a channel, and it's not like, should I build out a channel, and who's gonna buy it? It's gonna be, I know who's gonna buy it, and I kinda know how I'm gonna go about doing this, and then you're gonna use your money more effectively, is my thought.
Maybe my colleagues have a different view, but I've rarely seen, if someone has a market opportunity, that market opportunity disappears a year later. So if you take that 12 months and as Tom was saying earlier, you build up to where you are more investment ready. You are going to spend less time trying to get investments. You're going to be more successful from a valuation perspective. Now, if the market opportunity is going to go away, that's a different matter. I've rarely seen that happen.
Now, I would just, before Mark, let me just, get a little bit different tact. It's obviously it's a very personal decision, depending on your personal finances and your family and a million different vectors, right? But what I try to tell entrepreneurs is there's investment money and there's really good investment money. And not all dollars are the same. If you take $100,000 to your uncle or your aunt and they just give you the cash, that's okay money. If you get money from a VC and a seed round for $1 million, that's kind of predatory, right? They're gonna want a big chunk of your life, right? My advice is if you can find somebody strategically that can help you advance your business, probably not your uncle, might not be a generic VC, but it might be somebody in your channel ecosystem. It might be somebody in the adjacent technology sector. Somebody can introduce you to new relationships and things. That's the money you want to go raise. It can actually help. The cash is one thing, but strategic relationships at an early stage is really, really, really critical. So again, it depends on a million factors, but I always say, go find strategic money. Just don't take cash from your uncle or a generic VC guy, but find somebody in your business that knows your business, knows your space, that can help you advance your business, not just give you cash.
So it's not just the dollars, it's the fine print. What's the valuation? What are the preferences? What happens to other shareholders? Years ago, I invested as an angel in a company that became a MESA mentee. That company just turned down a $700,000 round because it was more money than they felt they needed, and therefore they were going to have to give up more equity than they wanted to at that stage. And there were a whole series of terms and conditions as they really dove into it, they decided they didn't like. So it's not just about a dollar amount, it's all of these other considerations.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your being here.